Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon portion, at least on the West Coast anyway, the afternoon portion of the Future Ready Schools 2015 School Leadership Summit. Hopefully you enjoyed the last few hours of the summit and are ready to continue the wonderful event and engage in conversation and provide some perceptions of what's working in your school aligned to Future Ready, the Future Ready framework with the Twitter chat that was happening thanks to the Lead Wild group. So thank you, Lead Wild group, for participating and moderating that wonderful Twitter chat we just had. And of course, you can follow anything that happened in that Twitter chat by going to Twitter and typing in the hashtag VSLS15. Hashtag VSLS15. So we have a great plenary keynote presentation right now that's going to be developed by one of our partners of ISTE, of course. ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education. We thank our partners very much for being part of this, including all the ones you see on the screen right now. They're the ones who are helping put this event on, recruiting speakers, marketing the event, and just being aligned to the Future Ready initiative. Of course, TCAL is the founding member. I am Jason Borgum, the program director for TCAL, if you didn't get to see me this morning. I do want to introduce you to the wonderful presenters that will be helping you become more connected with Future Ready and really more connected to the national landscape of education and digital learning. Kecia Ray is currently the board chair for International Society for Technology and Education, and her counterpart right there is Mr. Matt Harris, who's chair-elect of the ISTE board, and they're taking time out of their very, very busy schedule, as you know, in about 3 days or so, 24,000 or so of probably your closest friends and relatives will be convening in Philadelphia. So thank you, Kecia and Matt, for joining us today and imparting on us some wonderful words of wisdom.
Well, thank you for having us. Matt had to run. We are having some slight technical issues. Nobody on this Google Hangout would understand that at all. But we are having some slight technical issues, and Matt has left the room, so to speak, to try to solve those issues and see if we can get a little bit more bandwidth allocated to us. But I'll go ahead and give a little bit of background of kind of what I'm doing in the role as ISTE and what my function is in that position, and then Matt, what his role is, and then we'll get into our very brief presentation that hopefully will kind of set the context for the rest of the afternoon. I am recently retired from my full-time job in Nashville Public Schools and getting ready to venture on. My new position will be announced during ISTE, so for those of you that are attending ISTE, stay tuned. I am now just kind of working as full-time chair of the ISTE Board of Directors. Our board is 12 members strong, and we have a new election coming up. There'll be some information at the ISTE conference about the kind of modifications in our election cycle and our nominations process. So again, if you're planning to come to ISTE, which starts on Saturday, then stay tuned for those announcements and that information. Matt is from Singapore, actually, by way of San Francisco, but he lives in Singapore and represents our kind of Eurasia delegation, and he'll be serving as the chair beginning in January. So he's learning and following summer, or I'm there, and the next year it'll be his turn at the podium. And what we thought we would talk about today is leadership, and you can kind of go ahead and move the slide, is leadership and kind of what leadership means in ed tech or in education in general, and how you build, how you cultivate leadership and how you sustain leadership. So Matt is back, and do you want to kind of say anything? Oh, he's not here yet. So you might be interested to know that when the Future Ready kicked off, we in Nashville Public Schools, the U.S. Department of Ed, Richard Collada and team came down. Arnie Duncan was there as well, came down to Nashville And we held a large summit with our school district leadership, our community leadership, and our kind of government, mayor, city council members, state legislators, membership. Everyone was invited to this event. And Richard addressed everyone on kind of what the expectations were going to be around Future Ready. He had never talked about it publicly before, so we were really excited to be the first location that he came to talk about it. And he brought with him this pledge and asked our superintendent to sign the pledge. And our superintendent was very eager to take on that pledge and to take on that charge. And that process, that coming together, actually kicked off our strategic planning process for our school district, which is what what Matt and I want to talk to you about today, is kind of how do you plan, how do you strategically plan to be future ready as a leader, and then how do you grow your organization to be able to cultivate the environment for future ready and sustain that along the way. So next slide, please. Thank you. So what is leadership and what does it require? We believe that leadership requires courage. We believe that it requires collaboration. It requires strategic planning. It requires a commitment. So you have to, if you're a leader in a school district or in an organization, you have to be able to be committed to the organization and to the charge of making sure that every student, which the pledge is asking us to do, that every student is connected and that they are receiving the type of instruction and education that will prepare them for the world that we have today and the world that is soon coming, that's just around the corner. So again, when we had Richard and team in Nashville and we kicked off our strategic planning process, what was very important to us was our superintendent of schools, who signed that pledge, to talk to all the stakeholders in the room about how important it was to make sure that our students were prepared for college and career, and that you can't really participate in any job today or take any classes beyond high school today without having some kind of access to technology. You have to be familiar with it, you have to know how to use it, you have to know how to engage with it, and you have to be proficient in netiquette, as we used to say, social media, digital literacy. And so these are very important things for our kids to be familiar with, and as a leader, it's your job to make sure that you're laying a foundation within your district, school, or organization that would ensure your kids have access to the tools that they need, and that would include teachers that know how to teach with technology, that know how to provide an environment, instructional environment where kids can thrive and explore their own strengths around using technology for daily as a extra event, or hey, I've been in the workplace, which is you don't think about going to work without logging into a computer and checking your email. Matt, do you want to add anything? No?
Yes, apologies to everybody. Got any technical problems on my end. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Muted.
We can hear Matt through Kecia's microphone. So Matt, you're coming in through Kecia, but we can hear you. And now Kecia, you're muted, so we're not hearing anything.
Okay, go.
We've tried 3 devices on my end and 2 different internet connections. My data rates are going through the roof. Everything. We're going to get this going. So anyway, we know that Kecia's works, and we're we're going to use that.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, anyway, so now that we're here, Kecia gave a nice introduction of kind of this notion of courage and setting things up for students for this 21st century learning, which I think is key. And it's one of the key elements that I know that we talk about a lot at ISTE. It's a key element of what we do in schools in the U.S. And then I work quite a bit internationally, and it's a big discussion point that we hit quite often is, are we preparing students for the world that we lived in as teachers, that they are living in now, or for the future that's going forward? And that's really the power of this initiative, is really taking a leadership perspective to make sure that our schools and our programs and our allocation of resources really does focus on making sure that we are setting things up for the future. And, you know, it does take courage. It does take the ability to go to a board or to go to your senior leadership, to to your teachers and say, this is what we're going to do as a group. This is how we're going to move the needle forward for our kids, and it's going to be different. There are going to be challenges. Without that level of courage for you as a leader, or for your site leaders or your teacher leaders, you're not going to be able to do that. So having a group of people together to be able to help move things forward is absolutely critical. And so one of the other pieces that we talk about quite a bit is leadership has a strong element around collaboration. And that's one of the nice things about this Future Ready pledge, is that we are working together within these 1,800 school leaders that have signed the pledge, but then we're also working collaboratively within our schools. We're working very hard to make sure that everybody knows what we're planning to do through shared visioning and strategy, and that everybody's on board. Everybody has a voice in what our Future Ready looks like for each individual school. And as you do that, creating a clear strategic vision, creating a clear strategy is a key element of the leadership that we've seen in, I'm going to use the word successful, in successful schools that are moving the needle forward and becoming more future ready. There is a very clear process in place or procedure where the folks in the central office or the site-based leadership know what needs to be done in order to create a clear plan that is then communicated to the community. And that strategy talks about short-term goals and long-term goals, and ties them into this broad swath of things that we're looking at, be it resource allocation or personnel or whatever. Those pieces are just absolutely critical.
You tell them to forward the slide.
Okay. Can you forward the slide?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Can you forward the slide for me? Thank you very much. Good.
So what does Future Ready require? What do we think it looks like? What we believe Future Ready looks like is kind of what I alluded to when we were talking about leadership. Future Ready is when you walk into a school today, you need to make sure that every single student in that classroom has access to the necessary technology that they need to learn today. In the States, most of the schools in our country are focused on online assessments as, you know, unfortunately an end game. But all kids, all students need to have access to the technology that their parents would have access to in a work environment. So when we talk about being future ready, we talk about kids having the type of learning experience that's going to prepare them for what we know the workplace looks like today and what we anticipate the workplace to look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So the first priority, there's always the question of what comes first, you know, connectivity or the device. And just Kecia Ray's personal opinion, not ISTE's opinion, not Matt's opinion, just my personal opinion is you've got to make sure that you've got connectivity in 2015. Now, when I started this journey in 1983, that was a different conversation. But today, where we have the the wherewithal as a country to make sure we have connectedness, and where our president has set aside funds to ensure that we can have that, and our FCC has allocated accordingly as well, then we really need to focus on making sure there's connectivity in all schools. And that connectivity needs to be such that kids can get access to the internet 24/7 from their school. In many communities, we know that they can also get access from libraries, public libraries and school libraries and government buildings. Some really innovative communities have put Wi-Fi on buses and are parking buses in locations to give home access to the internet. But thinking out of the box on how we can provide access to our students, to the internet for our students is really high on the priority list, especially as we're moving to more cloud-based instruction and cloud-based storage of our instructional materials and our learning materials. So that once they have access to the internet, then what are they going to use to get that access, right? So you've got plugs in every room, but what are you going to put in the plug so that you can actually get out to the internet? Making sure that children have devices. And there's great debate over this. I love to be involved in the conversations that I'm in around devices. There's a lot of conversation around who should provide the device. Is it the school's responsibility? Is it the parent's responsibility? I think that's still a conversation we need to have. I think that a lot of districts are doing a lot of really unique and wonderful things to provide devices to their children in their schools, and they're doing it through a variety of ways. They're doing it through Chromebooks, through Surface, through iPad, through laptops, Dell and HP, Toshiba. They're doing a lot of wonderful things. I don't think any one solution is a one-size-fits-all. So I think it's very specific to your community and your school how you decide to provide the devices, whether it be a BYOB or whether it be that the school is going to pay for it and use certain allocated funds and make those available. But I do know that kids need access to a device in order to access the internet. So when you know that they've got access to the internet and you know that they've got access to the device, then you've got to make sure, and this is the most essential piece of the whole equation, that they have a teacher that is really excited and prepared to use that technology as an instructional tool and as a learning tool, and that they're going to facilitate a class environment whereby students have the freedom and flexibility to explore their own learning and their own individual pathways using the devices that they have access to. And that teacher can manage the classroom and manage instruction and facilitate the environment so that kids really are engaged and in tune with their own learning and having every opportunity to excel and master at their own pace. That's, to me, what I want to see in every single school and every single classroom. Matt, what do you want to see?
Yeah, I would go along with that. That when I think of Future Ready in the schools that I see, there's just like Kecia said, there's this intersection of the infrastructure pieces, the access to technology, the IT infrastructure in a school or in a district, the bandwidth, the machines. That's one element of the equation that Future Ready schools have to be committed to investing in, whether it's through personnel or finances or whatever. That has to collide or has to connect with this notion of instruction in the classroom. And it's around supporting teachers and creating more dynamic 21st century type of instruction that is not as summative based in your assessments but more formative, because that's really the future that students are going into when they go into the workforce or into universities, is that they need to be able to take information around a task or a responsibility and change their approaches and change their uses of tools on the fly. And I know that a lot of our schools are evaluated in more of this summative standardized testing model, but that's not the reality of where our schools need to get to best serve students as they go forward. And so this Future Ready pledge, as you take it, what we're finding is that schools have to find a balance of kind of this compliance issue around creating educational programs that meet the needs of now and our funding models and our standardized testing, but then also moving more towards a group-based model or a project-based model where students are given large tasks and they have to engage in inquiry where they not only consume knowledge but they also are creating it, that there's a product at the end where they are changing what's going on, and the feedback that we're giving them is authentic to them and their context rather than our assumption about what a student should know about biology or about mathematics. That's if you're going to go work at Facebook, if you're going to go solve our energy crisis, if you're going to work on climate change, there is no end game there. And so to prepare students for that is kind of what the Future Ready mission does. It kind of moves us to this point where we're going beyond just the bounds of what we know about learning in the 20th century and moving them forward. There's also a third area that we're talking a lot about here at ISTE, and I know that Kecia's done a lot of work in her schools, and I know that I see it a lot internationally, and it's this notion of melding the infrastructure with the instruction and tying it all into data. Using live data on students, on performance, on cohorts, and tracking that information in order to improve what's going on in the classroom. I mean, we can invent instruction, we can do projects, we can do these standardized tests, but we really don't know what is best for students within a certain time frame unless we can use some sort of modeling around the data that we collect around them to improve what we're offering them, improve our assessments, and to improve instruction as a whole, be it a district or a school. And so the Future Ready project here, along with all of these other items, really kind of asks you to take a look at the data that you have on hand, asks you, have you collected the right data, or are you just collecting the requisite data to kind of move things forward in your existing schools, and are you using that data in a meaningful way to make decisions around what's happening in the classroom with that kind of that very basis of, are we improving student learning? So when I think of Future Ready, again, I hit these three things. I hit the infrastructure and the access, which is obviously very important. It's very tied to budgeting. It's very tied to personnel and resourcing. I then look at the instructional piece, which is tied very much to teaching and learning. What are our students experiencing? How are we supporting our teachers with professional development? How do we tie that into budgeting and time allocations? And then tying those all together within data, which kind of covers everything, whether it's the infrastructure around data systems, personnel to mine this data, or even the processes that we put together to use that data for overall systemic improvement and overall understanding of what we do as an institution.
That's a perfect segue to our next slide, which is linking leadership and Future Ready. So you have to have, in order to do that, you have to have great leadership. And you have to be supported by the top, but the top also has to support growing leaders throughout the whole district, school, or organization. So you got to have really a lot of conversations around that are courageous conversations around the commitment to the charge. What the expectations are have to be communicated right off the bat. These are the expectations. This is what we're going to do as a district or school. This is the direction that we're going in. And as I said to many people that worked under me, and that and our superintendent said to many people that worked under him, if you're either going to be on the bus or you're going to be off the bus. So this is the direction we're going in, but everybody has to take responsibility for their piece of meeting this vision. And if you are not willing to move with us, then you're going to have to move somewhere else. And we had a lot of people that chose to move somewhere else, and that was okay, because we want everybody to be comfortable in meeting the vision and the mission for the district. So what we did is we involved them all in the strategic planning process. So we knew that we wanted to be future ready. We knew what that meant because it had been so wonderfully articulated in the documents that we'd received. And so we used that kind of as our guiding document to the strategic planning process and to start that conversation. And we also wanted to make sure that that all of our leadership, all levels of leadership, understood what future ready meant. So we used videos, we did webinars, much like this, that would help everyone, principals, academic coaches, lead teachers, district office personnel, everyone in the whole ecosystem of the public school district, help them understand what future ready meant and what it meant to our students. We had students attending our Future Ready Summit, and we had students come back and explain to the leadership within the district how important this meant to them, and what a game changer it would be if they could have access, and if they could have this kind of instruction, and if they could have project-based learning, if they could, if their school and classroom looked this way, how unbelievably life-changing that would be for them. And that was very empowering to our leaders, because they knew they were responsible for the kids, but having the kids kind of come and give testimonials to what a true difference this was going to make, it really lit the fire in our leaders and helped them become just really passionate about designing a future-ready school and a future-ready classroom. So how would you recommend linking leadership with the Future Ready initiative?
Can you move to the next slide, please? So we've kind of taken two approaches to looking at leadership within this Future Ready frame. By first talking about how do you cultivate Future Ready leaders in your schools. A lot of superintendents or a lot of site-based leaders are in charge of kind of that top-level approach to allocating resources and to lighting the fire, but they can't carry the torch. So there's a lot of work that has to be done beyond just the signing of a pledge. It's in cultivating the leadership within your schools, and that site-based leadership in terms of your principals or department leaders or teacher leaders. They have to be on board. To use Kecia's terminology, they have to be on the bus, and they have to be on the same bus. And this is where we find the most success, or where I really see the future ready schools kind of coming to coalescence, where that common bus is understood, where people have a common strategic vision for the school that they can articulate based on whomever they're talking to. So if you talk to a teacher leader at a really future ready school and they ask, what does it mean to be future ready, and let's say they're talking to a student, they can articulate that shared vision within the needs of a particular student in grade X. If they're talking to parents that are concerned about, does this mean my student's going to be on the internet all day, every day? They're able to articulate something that kind of addresses their concerns, but also helps get them excited about moving forward. Your leaders will do that from a top level, where they're able to allocate the resources, be they financial or personnel, or, as we were talking about earlier, finding time to do these things, down to the teacher leaders that are actually working with the teachers and the students to implement these things. All of them need to have that same understanding of what the shared vision is, and have to be part of that strategic planning process. And there's a way to do this. There's a way of looking at the leaders within your schools. I mean, we can identify positives and negatives in everybody, and we know what a good teacher and a bad teacher is. I mean, if you walk into a classroom, you can see those things. You can take some of those skills. You can take some of the ways that teachers and principals talk about their organizations, and then put a spin on it about, well, what are you doing for the future? How are you working to connect to our belief that 100% of our students should have access to technology at home and at school? 100% of our students should be doing some level of project-based learning within the classroom every term. Their ability to connect with those very concrete, applicable examples to your vision will show you very quickly. People will bubble right to the top about who are the folks that are going to be your greatest allies within your organizations to help move the charge forward.
And finding those people is so important, because if you have, it's one thing for me as a district administrator or an outside consultant to come into a school and work with them on becoming future ready. It's another thing if I've got a teacher on board that gets it and that sees the power in this transformation and that owns it. and takes it forward, because they can work with their colleagues in the building. And in Nashville we call them lead innovators, but they were amazing at working with their colleagues in the building and getting everyone on board so that they kind of owned it within the building. And even though it was something that our superintendent, all the way down to building level principal, all the way down to lead teacher believed in, it was when those lead innovators or those individual teachers that just said, man, this makes so much sense to me, when they got it and they became impassioned, then it took off like wildfire. We also saw in those schools a tremendous increase in academic achievement. So there is a silver lining to this, because kids performed much, much higher academically when they were in an engaging, personalized and blended learning environment. So those were kind of our strategies for implementing Future Ready, and we saw great gains in it. We also worked with our HR department or human capital department to make sure we hired the right people. You want to make sure that the people that are coming into the organization are going to be on board with what the district is trying to do. And companies are really good at doing that. School districts not so much. So companies are good at saying, that we got to get somebody that believes in our brand, that believes in our product, that believes in our company, and that will help it go forward. And in school systems, we don't do that well. But I think we need to do it better, and I think we need to be very intentional about letting people know as we're hiring them, hey, this is what's important to us, this is what we're doing for our kids, this is a focus of our instruction, and we're all in, and we need you to be all in too. And if this isn't something that you can buy into, then maybe this isn't the district for you, and we just have to be real frank about that.
We have actually taken that even further, and I imagine that, well, I kind of imagine that you have done as well. We have put this future ready kind of ethos within our staff evaluation processes. So there's a part in there where we talk about, where we ask the teachers, how are you challenging students and how are you challenging yourself? Mm-hmm. And we did this for two reasons. Number one, we're looking for evaluation data, metrics to be able to evaluate ourselves as an organization, to say, are we meeting this charge of being future ready? Are we really looking forward? And so we're able to take those responses from the teachers and aggregate them together to understand about what's happening within particular grade levels or particular schools, and to use that data to kind of plan going forward. Again, coming back to that importance of data-driven decision making. But there was more to it, and it kind of comes back to an old adage in schools that you assess what you value. Mm-hmm. Right? And so what we felt is, if we put this into the teacher evaluation and into the hiring processes, if we were showing our staff that this was an important criteria of evaluation and assessment of their performance, they would value it as well. And it's really been quite successful. It is something that is talked about in the staff room. They talk about what's the next thing, how do I get more materials, how do I connect in to give my thoughts about what's going on and help them move the needle forward at the school. So that combination has allowed us to have kind of a grassroots push towards the importance of doing future ready in schools, along with kind of this torch lighting at the top, and where they're meeting in the middle around students. And the students really can see what's going on, not just because they have a device in their hands, but there's an authentic usage of the device that they can take beyond the school. So what we're finding is that students that come back to our school, one of the things they thank us for is their ability to interact kind of in a globalized manner when they go off to university. They can do group projects, they can communicate, they can manage their life online without the distractions that other students have, and they're being productive right when they hit the ground and they get to college or the workforce, whereas they're telling us that some of these students that have 5 devices sitting in a lecture hall are so distracted that they're having to redo classes, or their performance is nowhere near where it was in high school. Our kids are jumping right in with no problem whatsoever.
I think that's what's so cool about this movement, is that you're in an international school and you're doing the exact same things in your international school that we're doing stateside. So that's super cool. So, another thing that we kind of wanted to touch on was how you sustain these leaders. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm retired from my job, so I've left the work to the leaders that I groomed, basically, in the district in my department, and Matt has done similar things with his organization. And so, how do you make sure that you can sustain the future ready leaders? And this is actually a diagram that Matt put together.
Can you go to the next slide, please?
This is the next slide.
That would be. Can you move to the next slide? Thanks.
Oh, sorry. This is a diagram that Matt put together. Now this makes sense to you. That he's going to speak to, and then I'm going to speak to the next slide.
So so far we've kind of talked about cultivating leaders and putting them into your own schools and signing the pledge. But to me, what I have found with a lot of these types of programs is they become very boutique, where you're hitting one group of students, you're doing it for X period of time, and then it kind of dies. It doesn't get into the DNA of an organization. And so I'm going to draw upon, so what I'm going to talk about here around sustaining your future growth is not around resource allocation, but it's kind of around intellectual and planning allocations. So I worked eons ago, I worked at Microsoft as an intern, and I remember listening to Bill Gates give this speech about learning organizations and how they find success in kind of this ever-changing world that we're living in. And what he said is that a learning organization is most successful when it can operate simultaneously in the fields of creation, maintenance, and innovation. And this is directly applicable to what we do as future-ready leaders, because we need to have our schools kind of reside equally in those places as well. In order to be future-ready, as our students do, they need to be creating. You need to create new programs, you need to create new initiatives for your teachers, new professional development, new approaches to assessment, new approaches to using data. Those all have to be created constantly. There has to be something new and fresh always on the horizon, because that's just the nature of the world that we live in right now, and it's the expectation that I think that most of us have, that organizations will continue to kind of reinvent themselves. So you have to be doing that. Now, of course, we have quite a bit in place already, and there's a lot of work that has to be done to maintain the great programs that we have, or to sunset the programs that we don't, or to meet the compliance requirements that we have and the assessment pieces. So equal to the amount of time that you spend creating, there has to be an amount of time that you spend maintaining. And these two kind of work in parallel, where you're looking at things to make stuff move forward, but then making sure that the stuff that you have is well tended in the gardens that are our schools. So as you're looking at your kind of your allocation of resources, or your evaluation of what the school is doing in its next year of strategic planning, what I suggest is hitting those two areas. But what I have found, and kind of what Bill was alluding to, is that is very short term, and the future is not very short term. And our students, if they join us at any point in their elementary school careers, are not going to reap the benefits of what we give them until really they get beyond us. They're gonna hold it in the short term, but they're gonna use these things in their futures that are going to college, going to the workforce, living their lives in this kind of highly digitized society. And so we need to innovate for them. We need to look at our schools and think about what are some of the programs we need to bring in the next few years. And so just as a for instance, to kind of tie back to this data piece is, having a real discussion within your district about what is the learning management system we use, and how are we going to leverage that data to improve mathematics instructions in grade 8 or something like that. So there's a lot of innovation that can be had around that. There's innovation around the systems. There's innovation around connecting that data with student performance. There's innovations around creating new models of professional development and teacher evaluation, around connecting what the students actually do with how they're performing. Those sorts of discussions, though, what I find oftentimes is they're kind of left to the side, where we focus so much on maintaining what we're doing and creating new programs that we're not really thinking forward. And so in order to be a truly future-ready school and to be a future-ready leader, you have to ensure that all of these folks that you've cultivated are thinking equally about creation and maintenance, and spending a portion of their time, I kind of show about a quarter of their time here, innovating for the future. So, Google used to have this model of the 20% doing something on your own. And I'm not suggesting a very specific number for anybody, but that notion of focusing on looking forward, on building something new to be in that mode of constant improvement, and to tending your existing garden is really the only way that we can create a situation where the kids or the students are gaining the information and competencies that we want now and developing those skills to be able to learn and thrive in the future. If we don't do it ourselves, they're really not going to be able to do it on their own.
Well, and if we could move to the next slide, and this is our last one before you get our Twitter handles. You know, one of the big things, I mentioned at the beginning, one of the big things that we used as our guiding document to kind of start that conversation was the Future Ready documents that were provided by the U.S. Department of Ed. Another humongous, and I would be terribly remiss if I didn't mention this, document that we used were the ISTE standards and the essential conditions. And we actually took the essential conditions to our school board and the standards and had our school board formally adopt those prior to holding this summit. So we grounded our work for our plan in the ISTE standards. That helps sustain the Future Ready initiative in our district, because now we've linked it not to Kecia Ray and the work that Kecia Ray did as executive director, or Jesse Register, who was an amazing superintendent, and now he's retired. It's linked to the work that ISTE has done with the standards, the essential conditions, the work that the U.S. Department of Ed did around Future Ready. So now it's linked to organizations that have legacy and not to a person in an organization. The other thing that we did is we created an accountability structure that engaged the community in the process of holding the district accountable. So we have monthly meetings, and that seems extreme, but it really is necessary, monthly meetings with our community partners that would monitor our implementation of the plan. So as I'm retiring and Dr. Register's retiring, those community folks are saying, well, who do we talk to now? Who do we hold accountable to now? Who are we going to talk to, who are we going to work with now? And so they're constantly engaged because they are the people who are employing our graduates. So it's always to their benefit to make sure that the school district is on the right trajectory to prepare students so that we can produce wonderful graduates that will be highly qualified to fill their positions. So we developed an accountability structure rooted in work around U.S. Department of Ed and certainly ISTE's amazing work with essential conditions and standards. And then we also implemented a training, kind of an evaluation method that would constantly engage people in the process all along the way, and new people every single time. So we would get we would onboard people every year into the process so that when I left, literally there was no surprise and it was no big deal. They picked up, they moved on, they had the next meeting without me. They knew exactly what to do because everybody had been in the conversation from the beginning. And that's what gives you great success with these kinds of initiatives. If you think about what they've done in Mooresville and Dallas and in Clark County, Vegas, and in Houston, in San Francisco, in all of those counties that I've worked with personally, they've engaged the community in this way, and having an accountable partner, and that is ever so important. And then making sure that everyone understands the common language, that when you say Future Ready, something pops into their head that they know exactly what you're talking about, and they're not wondering, well, what, I wonder what Future Ready is. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody in the community knows. Everybody in the district knows. All the kids know. It's a common term, and everybody knows what the common outcome is for us as a district and us as and our students as graduates to be future ready. So those are my parting comments. I really have enjoyed the opportunity to participate in this virtual experience for Future Ready today. I hope that many of you are going to be at the ISTE conference, and joining Matt and I will be parading around starting Saturday over the next few days. And you're going to hear from our CEO, Brian Lewis, in a panel a little later on, and he's very excited to be talking to you this afternoon.
If you could actually go to the last slide. I just want to echo a lot of things that Kecia said about assessment and excuse me, and around working with partners internally and externally. The nice thing about this conference that I've enjoyed similarly is that you have a group of people with the same passions and the same understandings and the same desire to move things forward for kids, which means that you should use that beyond this conference. So connect with people, connect with the leaders internal to your organization for that common shared message, and ask questions of other schools of how they're doing things. What are the challenges that they're running into? What are their hurdles? And you'll find that their fresh perspective will be very helpful to you. We do that a lot with our schools internationally because we don't have districts. We don't have compliance requirements that have the same needs that you do. So we're out in the middle of the ocean. Some of us literally. I work on an island, and we have to talk to other people. So do that. Share your advice, share your expertise, and stay committed beyond just this year.
Join ISTE.
Join ISTE.
You can always do that. We would love that. www.iste.org.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Thumbs up.
Thanks to both of you. That was fun. We'll be seeing you soon. For those of you who are preparing for the next sessions, they start in 10 minutes. Go to the schedule page at futureready.education. And if you are interested in filling out a survey, go to learningrevolution.com/survey. We'll also send all registered participants a link later.
So we've got
Thank you both. Have a great day.
Before we kick off, but yeah, once we